Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today's guest is Seth Farpin, and he is chairman and founder over at vStock Transfer and ShareMedia.co. Seth, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. I've heard so much about you and the show I've listened to, and it's great to be here.
All right, Seth. So we got a lot to cover today. We're going to talk about helping companies on the journey to going public. A lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives that listen to this. So I'm sure they're going to get a lot of value, as will I. And I know that you were sent over to us or referred over to us by the Deal Flow guys, Charlie and Phil and his team over there. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think you were at the Microcap conference. I didn't get to go. The other co-founder here, Chirag, were you were there at the Microcap? Did you participate?
Yep, we were there. We were speaking on the sorts of fun topics related to publicly traded companies. We saw you guys there. You guys had a fantastic presentation and panel, and it was a great event.
Why? So what keeps you, I always like to get this out there, what keeps you going back to the Deal Flow events? Because I've noticed that, I've done a lot of interviews for them and for their various conferences, and the speakers, the attendees, the advocates in general, it's quality. It's quality. What keeps you going back?
I think at the end of the day, it's just a mixture of good people. I mean, companies you can always find, and they have great companies, and it's just the right, I think, combination of the issuers and the trade professionals, the investment bankers, and people that are there to help each other, and I think that's an important component.
That's great. I see it and I hear it, and I feel like there's a real culture around the conferences they put together, and people come year after year, and I think people just get tighter. I know business is happening because I hear about it all the time. So good stuff there. So let's go a little bit further into what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, like helping companies go public. Let's go maybe further back in your career and or journey. Like, when did you get obsessed with that idea and that concept of helping companies do that? Like how'd that start for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's something that I think about all the time. My three favorite letters, IPO. I used to be a securities attorney. Hopefully none of your listeners will against me. And ended up running an SEC filing firm in '02. Great story. Started in my basement, slept on my couch, ate pizza for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then ended up selling that company 5 years later. But through that journey, we ended up working with about 4,000 publicly traded companies, which was a great segue for us to enter the stock transfer business, which is vStock Transfer, where in a different way, as a transfer agent, we were able to provide services to companies that either are public or about to go public. And that's really where I spend most of my time, is seeing how we can assist them at the beginning of that journey through the end.
What are some of the challenges that they face, like in that beginning part of the journey? Like, how does that begin?
I don't know if only one podcast can cover the amount of time we need to discuss challenges, but no, I mean, I think if we're talking about these private companies that are looking to explore the IPO journey, I think that number one, they really need to spend some time to get their shop in order. And that's not a criticism of them. They're typically focused on how do they grow their business and focused on revenue. And then when it's time to act as if you're a big company, they really need to spend some time with the professionals to get their financials in order and get everything ready for the audit. And then when it comes to our services, the transfer agent, very often that shareholder list is just kept somewhere on an Excel sheet. And so there's a lot of sort of pre-work that needs to get done as they embark on going public.
So why should companies consider going public, and when? Because some people listen to this and maybe they've been kind of thinking of going that route, not thinking of going that route. They're like, it comes up. I feel like it's one of those things that come up pretty often in your experience. And obviously we're generalizing a little bit here, but why should they consider?
Yeah, no, it's actually a great question. Why go public? And as somebody who's had, thank God, a few exits, people say to me, well, why don't I go public? And honestly, I half joke to them, well, I know better. No, it's a couple of variables that people want to weigh. The most obvious reason that people go public is because it's a great resource to access capital. That's usually the main reason, but there are other side reasons. And, just to give your listeners some other reasons that the companies are generally considering is first and foremost, the stock is looked at as currency. And so if they have that stock as currency, it gives them a tool to then go ahead and look at different types of acquisitions that they ordinarily would not be able to afford on a straightforward cash basis. Another way to leverage that stock as currency is they can go ahead and expand their team with talent that is far beyond their means without, warrants or options, and now they can make it really attractive. The other two that I can think of offhand is, by being on the public stage, they have this tremendous platform on a worldwide basis, and I think a lot of the foreign issuers come here so that they can use that platform to tell their story. And probably the last one is from a valuation standpoint. You can be at a phenomenal private company, but as a public company, it gives you, perhaps better valuations, more access to certain comps. And so, there's a lot of pros to going public, and, obviously we can list some other cons on the flip side.
Yeah. One of the things I hear in the media quite a bit as of late, and just, I don't know, last couple of years, of course, is, going public versus crowdfunding versus like other forms of funding. Like, where do you stand on that issue? Obviously, every company is going to be different, but like just some thoughts on that, like pros and cons.
Yeah, Adam, you hit it right on the head. I mean, I think in today's environment, some issuers have a couple of choices on, well, now I know I do want to go public. What's the best way for me? Whether it's a SPAC or a direct listing or crowdfunding. I think the main consideration or one of the top considerations is that, crowdfunding means you're raising smaller amounts of money from a lot of different people. And so some of our shareholders will have 10, 15, 20,000 individual mom and pop or individual shareholders.
Man, isn't that something to think about, Seth?
Well, imagine so our office, answering the phones with those many individuals. And, when the company puts out good or bad news, our phones are ringing off the hooks.
I'm cringing. I'm glad that people
exactly.
Can't see this.
Cringe for me.
I am.
But that is a tool, right? I mean, so
it is,
if you've got a product or something that people, it's like a home recognized brand that people want to be part of, then that's a great way to raise money from the masses, as opposed to doing it through one underwriter that's going to raise you $50 million at one shot. And, there's different ways of going about doing it.
Of course. Yeah. No, and I see that. And there is, and definitely one of the things that I do like for entrepreneurs in general is that you have options, right? Like you have options. You can think about what's going to work best for you. When it comes to like the conversation of, okay, so now we're getting to the next step, and let's just say you're listed. What are some of the things that these issuers or these companies should be aware of now? Like, let's just kind of take them further down the continuum. Now we're listed. Now what's next?
Yeah, I would say two things stand out in my mind. The first is that they have to recognize, and they certainly will recognize this quickly, is that, now that you're the CEO of a publicly traded company, you have to wear two hats, and that's really two full-time positions. The first is what you're used to, running your company, whether it's a biotech or a pharma. And then the other hat is now full-time PR, and that's communicating with shareholders and analysts and dealing with governance and compliance. And that really occupies an entirely full-time job, but except you've got to do both now. So that's point number one. And then point number two, I would stress highly to newly minted publicly traded CEOs, is that you really have to focus on storytelling. I think that historically, people would put out a press release, hope somebody reads it, and think that their stock is going to trade higher. And in today's environment, I strongly encourage people to leverage social. I mean, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's other forums, they have to storytell. They have to connect to the right audience, and they have to do it consistently, and they have to do it in a way that's really going to be authentic and let people know what's going on a more ongoing basis, rather than just putting out a press release every couple months and doing it as an update, as opposed to letting people know, really keeping them involved in your day-to-day. So those are things that I think that people, if they can really focus on themselves as being more of a media company rather than just a widget company, I think they're going to see some good results.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where I preach this all the time, and I love to hear when somebody else comes on the show and says it, is I'm like, we kind of don't have a choice anymore. There was a point in time, maybe 10, 15 years ago, where we could have looked at this either social media thing or otherwise and said, but now this is just part of a CEO's job. Like, you're not going to be able to, especially just depending the level of the company. I mean, the more your market cap, I mean, the more you're playing, the more risk you have in not doing that appropriately. But even on the smaller levels, like, I believe you kind of many times limit yourself if you don't have that footprint out there. Am I off on that? Like, what are your
No,
what are your thoughts on that? Like,
you're right, and I think
Yeah.
people are exactly as you are saying it. People are starting to absorb that and come to terms. I mean,
because it's real. It's real money. It's like it's real.
Yeah,
like it's
yeah.
really going to affect the stock nowadays. It's not like just these major stories of this, that. Even a lack of presence that can affect it.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, the average CEO that I would speak to 10 years ago, you mentioned the word LinkedIn, and the thing that pops into their mind is that it's a tool, for resumes. And now, if you were to meet somebody at a conference or potential investor, potential shareholder, the first thing they're going to do is Google you, and your LinkedIn profile comes up. And if it's not dynamic and energetic and it has your ticker symbol, then they may not even think that you're a real company, and they'll swipe and move on. So it really is simple, but
or even worse, they
important.
pull out the phone and they try to connect you with you on the spot. Even worse, right?
Right. And you're like, you're not really a thought leader.
Red.
Right.
I've
exactly.
seen people turn red in person and be very embarrassed because the other person's like, "Oh, you're CEO, blah blah," and they don't expect necessarily. "Oh yeah, let's connect on LinkedIn," and then the person's like, "Oh yeah, I don't really," and then the person just kind of gives them this look like what planet are you from?
Exactly.
I've seen it. It's so embarrassing.
It's true. That's the world we live in.
So I think that's a great transition too, because I did check out Share Media. So let's go further. I do want to bring up the LinkedIn a little bit further because I see that also what you're doing over at sharemedia.co. So let's tell us a little bit more about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just along the lines of what you were saying, is that we live in an environment where people have to communicate on an ongoing basis, and that although you can go to a conference and meet a few people, if you leverage the digital agency approach, you could be meeting targeted people day in and day out through a company like Share Media. We help CEOs and industry professionals primarily through LinkedIn. And I don't say social media in general. This isn't about Instagram or TikTok, which has its place. This is for professionals. And we live in a world where you can really convey a message and get excited and get your shareholders excited about what you're doing now, and really explain to them, like, well, here's why you should be looking at us now, and even, sprinkle in a little bit about this FOMO. Well, don't miss out, because if you come back to us in 6 months, here's what we could be doing together. And so we try to help position the messaging, the branding, the connecting, and I think that every CEO could even be doing this on their own, but it's something that's part of the overall packaging of shareholder communication in today's environment.
Yeah, I think it makes so much sense, and I just feel like, especially for those that are, to miss the boat on this, you can't just, and this is my opinion, I'm not putting this on you, but you can't just catch up when it comes to thought leadership content. Like, you can't just all of a sudden wake up one day and say, "Oh, I want to put out all this stuff because we don't have any presence." Like, it takes years to build up quality content, like a substantial quality content. You can't just, so every year that a CEO is letting their profile kind of lay dormant or not doing anything, that's like years where their competition in their same industry and market sector, if two CEOs, two different companies, the same market, they're going after the same clients, year over year that compounds, and that you can't go back in time on Google and put out a thought leadership piece or get published in Forbes or this or that or wherever else you're getting published at. You can't do that in retroactively.
That's so true.
You versus somebody else, you don't get to just flip the switch one day. You got to start somewhere.
It's so true. And even in yesteryear, the way of doing it used to be like email marketing and email blasts and things like that.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily work so well in today's environment. And if you think about it, if you can build up your connections, but really targeted quality connections, let's say 5, 10,000, and then you post, 2-3 times a week about updates and good content about your industry, you're getting, 80, 90, 100,000 eyeballs a month on your name, your logo, your positioning, your messaging, your trading symbol. That's far more effective than the old school email blasts used to be.
Yeah, and people are watching. That's the main thing. Just like I tell people all the time, like, people are watching. You don't know they're watching. They're watching just like you are. Other people are. They're scrolling too, just like you are. So you either want to be found or you don't. One of the two. It's up to you.
Exactly.
Well, Seth, first off, this has been a lot of fun. I'm happy that the Deal Flow guys referred you over to us for an episode and to really get into that discussion of going public. I know we scratched the surface on this thing, and I know you have a whole lot more to offer. That being said, if somebody wants to learn more about vStock Transfer or sharemedia.co or connect with you and your team, how do they do that?
I'm an open book, so they can just email me directly. Best email is seth@vstocktransfer.com. And I would love to answer any questions, any and all things related to, pre-IPO, IPO marketing, and, do my best to add value wherever, whenever I can.
Awesome. And for everybody listening, just so you know, we'll put the links in the show notes, and you can just click on the links and head right on over to check out Seth's websites as well. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters or engaging in an episode, this is a daily show. Each and every day, we're bringing out new episodes, new entrepreneurs, new executives, new stories, hopefully new inspiration. If that sounds interesting to you, hit that subscribe button, because we have many more shows lined up for you and episodes, and we don't want you to miss a thing. And Seth, again, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Likewise. We'll be in touch.